Hello and welcome back. Today I wanted to answer a viewer request. I have a lot of different videos about lightsabers, and a viewer asked me about the lightsaber blades specifically. Since most manufacturers give you the ability to purchase blades separately, I thought it might be useful to have a little bit of a head-to-head so that you can see the different manufacturers' blades and the different blade types and how they stack up to each other. Now before I do that, I wanted to cover some groundwork that I covered in a tutorial I did on blade diffusion. Basically, there are single diffused blades, like you're going to get from Ultrasabers. What this is a clear tube. Inside of it is a diffusion film, which is basically rolled up cellophane. Right? The clear blades come in thin-walled, or mid-grade, and thick-walled, or heavy-grade / dueling blades. We also have trans-white blades. Now, trans-white blades look like this. This is what Ultrasabers calls an ultraedge blade. They also come in thin-walled and thick-walled. I have a thick-walled one right here. This is also the same type of blade that's used by Kyberlight sabers. I'll talk about the difference between the Kyberlight and the Ultrasabers blade a little bit later down the road. Okay, the trans-white blades are a transparent white, but they also do still contain a blade film. The Kyberlight one doesn't come with that blade film. My other tutorial talked about how to add it. The third type of diffusion is going to be a dual diffused blade. Now Saber Forge uses this idea. This is a V3 and a V4 infinity edge blade. I'll talk about the difference between the two, but basically what you can see here is this sort of frosted look that the blade has. It's somewhere between trans-white and clear. It's kind of a frosted plastic, and inside of it is that blade diffusion film. So it's diffused once and twice. If I took the film out of this, the light would still go part way up or decently far up the lightsaber blade. I put the film in and it diffuses the blade with the film and with the blade material itself. The other way to do this is with the type of blades that you find that you get through Vader's Vault or that you can make on your own with parts from Ultrasabers or from custom Saber Shop. Now this is a dual diffused blade, which is a standard clear blade with a diffusion film in it to diffuse it once, and then hit with a bit of a sanding or steel wool, either sandpaper or steel wool, to sort of rough up the outside and create that sort of second diffusion. Alright, so those are the type of blades that we're dealing with. You notice that one of those was green. That's a Photon blade. I will cover what that does in just a moment. For this example, I'm going to be using two identical sabers. Now these are Kyberlight RGB sabers, so they have the ability to cycle between different colors. That'll give us a pretty fair comparison from blade to blade. All right, first off, let's talk about the standard single diffused mid-grade and dueling grade blades that Ultrasabers sells. You can also get these through custom Saber Shop as blade stock. Now I have both these sabers set to green. Alright, now these mid-grade and heavy-grade blades, when we're dealing with that clear blade stock, the single diffusion gives you what people refer to as the light in a tube effect. Okay, you may not be able to see this through the camera, but what we have is we have a core of color, and then we have a little bit, and then you can kind of see the clear plastic tube around the outside of it. On camera, this doesn't show up so much. With the thin-walled or the mid-grade blade, it comes closer to the edge because there's less of that tube. With the thick-walled, there's more space between the edge of the actual blade and the edge of the light that we see. All right, the thick-walled doesn't illuminate quite as well, but they're still pretty comparable, all things told. All right. Take those out. Now, the brighter of the two, the thin-walled, let's compare that to the Ultrasabers trans-white or ultra-edge. Now the reason that they call this an ultra-edge is because the color, because of that white plastic, comes all the way to the edge of the blade. The downside is that in order to get it all the way to the edge of the blade, you end up washing out the color a little bit. Now, while this isn't as big a deal with green, it actually looks pretty good with green and blue. If we cycle to a red, there we go. If we cycle to a red, this one isn't actually too bad because it's a bright enough red, but if we cycle to a red, the red is much richer in the clear plastic blade than it is in the white blade, because the white on the ultra edge sort of washes out the color a little bit, and in parts you end up getting kind of a pinkish. All right, so for blues, for greens, ultra edge is a great idea. For reds, I highly suggest the clear. Now, let me take this same clear one and compare it to the other maker of an ultra edge blade, the Kyberlight blade. Okay, now Kyberlight blades are all thick-walled. So let me put in the thick-walled clear blade so that you can see them head to head. All right, this is a thick-walled clear blade on this side and a thick-walled white blade on this side. You'll notice, or you may not notice in the camera, but color on this one is a little bit more even, but not as vibrant as you get over here. All right, Kyberlight blades don't come with the film. This film has been added. Otherwise, it would come up to about right here, and then the blade color would start to wash out because they don't have that film in them. Film is cheap. See my other tutorial, and we'll talk to you very easily about how to put that in. All right. Going back to this one, let's talk about the mid-grade blade, clear, versus the dual diffused. Okay, this is a dual diffused blade from Saber Forge, the Infinity Edge blade. You notice that it has much the same idea as the trans white that Ultrasabers sells. It comes all the way to the edge in terms of color. There's not quite as much color washout in this as you get in the white, because you're not fighting with white, you're fighting with sort of a frost sort of color. It's still not quite as vibrant, but it's pretty dang close on red. Okay, the thing about the Saber Forge blades is they only come in thick-walled, so you do lose a little bit of light in that regard, and you add a little bit of weight. Okay, here's a thick-walled Ultrasabers clear blade versus a thick-walled Saber Forge blade. Right. Ultrasabers thick-walled Ultrasabers thick-walled Ultra Edge blades are also a little bit more frosty and a lot less solid white. But here we have the Ultrasabers, here we have the Saber Forge. All right. Comparing the comparing the standard mid-grade blade again to the blade that you're going to get through some place like Vader's Vault with their type of dual diffusion. You see that this is kind of a happy medium. We have a lot less color washout than we did with the white. We have a lot more light transmission than we did with the Saber Forge blade. Okay, the Vader's Vault blades get a lot of press for being some of the better blades. You can do them on your own just by buying the clear ones from Ultrasabers and giving it a quick sand, or buying the material from Custom Saber Shop and sanding it down yourself. For me, this is probably the best blend of all of the qualities. Color comes all the way to the edge, and it's not washed out nearly as much. You can also get these in mid-grade, which is a real benefit. All right, one other blade option that I wanted to talk about is a Photon blade. Now you'll notice that this Photon blade is kind of a yellowish green, it's fluorescent. All right, you notice I put a red blade in it, and all I get is a little bit of a corruption of the color. It's kind of an orange. Okay, the Photon blades though, because of the fluorescence, if you ever see bright colors reacting under black light, that's the idea. So if I cycle to something that contains the color blue, this thing starts to light up and react with the blue. Okay, if I cycle to try to find a solid blue here. If I cycle to a solid blue, I get what Vader's Vault calls a rat ghoul green. Okay, now this is a really nice color, and this is where the Photon blades really shine. Now, Photon blade stock can be bought from custom Saber Shop. They can be bought completely assembled from Vader's Vault. Additionally, one of the day blades offered by Kyberlight is a darker green Photon blade. Here you see it without the light. Here you see it with a plain blue light on. And here you see it illuminated from the outside with a blue light. You can see how it kind of shines and reacts to the blue light. That's what the Photon does. Alright, so that's light transmission. Let me power these down and talk to you a little bit about some of the features of the different blade manufacturers. Okay, first off, let me cover Ultrasabers. Okay, Ultrasabers are some of the cheaper blades out there, especially if you buy their grab bag blades. You can get them with rounded tips, or you can get them with pointed tips. Right, pointed tips cost a little bit extra, but it's nice to have the option. Personally, I keep a pretty hefty stock of Ultrasabers blades because they are cheap, and because I can sand them down and get that dual diffusion out of them. Here I have an Ultrasabers blade with the tip, or with the pointed tip. Now you notice that their pointed tips are going to be clear, so if you get a trans white blade, it looks a little bit odd. When you light it up, you don't notice that quite so much. Okay, the difference between the Ultrasabers and the Kyberlight blades all have the pointed tip. That's the only option. The other thing about them is that when in the Ultrasabers blades, you're dealing with a plug that's glued in at the top. Kyberlight has a threaded cap. Kyberlight has a very deep threaded cap. Now you can see from the inside, this is the mirrored disc. A lot of the Ultrasabers have a solid mirror. This is a shine through, which is what that option means, meaning it's got a little hole in the middle of the mirrored disc, so a bit of light can illuminate the tip. The other place you're going to find threaded caps is with the Saberforge Infinity blades. That is probably the only real difference between a V3 and a V4 Infinity Edge blade from Saberforge. The V4 has a threaded cap. Most of the time I've found that these come glued in, so you can't unscrew it like you can the Kyberlight. That means it's not going to unscrew on you though. But you can see the threads in it. That does mean that it's harder for the blade to pop out because it's got more grip there than just the glued in plug. Saberforge uses a blade tip that has a little hole in the middle of the mirrored bit so that it actually does illuminate the end, much like the Kyberlight, except with a slightly different design. Alright. Vader's Vault uses a pointed tip. And you can select on the Vader's Vault website whether you want it to have shine through or whether you want it to just be a mirrored cap. So they give that option to you. You don't have the option to just get a clear blade from Vader's Vault. They always put this finish on it, this sort of sanding. So in answer to who makes the brightest blade and who makes the best blade, well, I would say that there's two answers to that. The brightest blade is made by Vader's Vault. The best blade is made by you at home. Right? Best meaning that the Vader's Vault effect they get through the dual diffusion is something that you can do on your own for a fraction of the cost that it takes to get a completed blade. Their blades cost $40, $50. If you go to Ultrasabers and you get a grab bag blade, you get a blade for $10, something in that, or $10 and then shipping. You go to Custom Saber Shop and you get a blade for about $15. Now you take some sandpaper to that, you put a little bit of diffusion film in it if you got it from Custom Saber Shop, and you end up with the same sort of creature, capable of bringing the light all the way to the edge, not dimming the color, and looking pretty good on film. You end up with a very similar creature at a real budget cost. So that's what I usually end up doing. I get the Ultrasabers grab bag blades, I take some sandpaper to them, and I turn them into dual diffused blades myself. Hopefully this has been of help, and hopefully it answers the question that the viewer asked me. Gives you a little bit of a chance to see them side by side. And if you like this, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and meet me back here for more reviews or tutorials.